Hello and welcome back to Anna Rose Reads the podcast. I am your host, Anna, and as you can probably tell from my voice, I'm feeling a little bit under the weather after lots of traveling the last 5 days. Well, actually, 6 days. But I'm here all the same, and I'm super thrilled to be sharing this episode with this debut author, Sara Hinkley, as we talk about her book, The Red Sacrament, which is all about atmosphere, character, and lots of very moody and emotional vampires. So, if that sounds like your kind of thing, you should definitely stick around and listen to this conversation. And I'll catch up with you at the end. We do leave things mostly spoiler free, so if you haven't had the chance to read this one yet, as it is out today, no worries. We avoid all of the big plot pieces. I think we talk around things quite nicely. So, yeah, I'll catch up with all of you guys in just a bit. Hello, Sara. Welcome to Anna Rose Reads the podcast. How are you doing?
Hi, Anna. I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing wonderful. I get to talk to you this morning. And for my listeners who don't know, I got to meet Sara at StokerCon this year, and it was a lovely, lovely time. So this is a reunion of sorts where we get to
Yeah.
catch up and talk about her incredible book, The Red Sacrament, that's coming out soon from Titan Books. Um, but I guess just to start off, I mean, how are you? How's life been treating you since I saw you last?
Well, Stoker was amazing. It was so fun and it was so wonderful to meet so many people that I'd seen like in phone or in computer.
Yeah.
Like that was wonderful. And I think a lot of people maybe had the same experience where on the very last day I looked at my phone and saw I had taken not a single picture. Like
Yeah.
I had nothing. Had like a photo of half a burger and that was it. It was too much fun.
It's such a weird mix though, especially I find with soakers, like you want to be in the moment and you like don't want to be on your phone. You don't want to, kind of take away from any of the experience. But then, like you said, as soon as you go to leave, you're like, shit, I don't have like any of this captured. I don't like to reminisce and like it's such a weird moment. I've gone through
Yeah.
that the last 2 years that I've
Not a
gone.
single memory. Okay.
Yeah. No, I totally feel you. Yeah, so I kind of want to start off this interview by, The Red Sacrament is your debut. So if you want to briefly introduce yourself for my listeners and kind of talk a little bit about your career outside of the book world, kind of what led you to write and all like, just your overall background, I feel like would be a good place to start. And then we'll kind of go from there.
Yeah, totally. So I'm a costume designer. First for theater in my early career, and now mostly in TV and film. So I work in New York. I'm usually an assistant costume designer shopper. So I work in costume departments for TV and film, and I'm just kind of buying clothes all day long. So I came to writing fiction really almost by accident because during the COVID lockdowns, my industry totally shut down. So I went
Yeah.
from like a very punishing, intense, collaborative, creative working life with very long hours to absolutely nothing. And I needed something to do or I would go crazy. So that is kind of the origin story of the book. I had been curious about writing fiction, but never really tried it, never taken the plunge. But then obviously I had a lot of time on my hands that I needed to fill. So that is how the book was born.
Makes sense, yeah. And I feel like some of this kind of comes up in the book because this is the thing about the Red Sacrament for my listeners who don't know. It's a 500 page book that is so rich with like French history, theater, like context of theater and play and art and artistry, in addition to vampires, of course. And so, the thing that I was thinking about the whole entire time that I was reading it, because I had the unique experience of getting to know you a bit before I actually read the book, which doesn't always get to happen. And so I wanted to kind of just talk about how your actual work with costume, design, purchasing, like all this different stuff that you talked about had made its way into the book because I think that there's a real appreciation for performance art in theater and all these different things that certainly is palpable in the book. And I feel like that is a real piece of you that made it into the book, which is really, really cool to see. But I kind of wanted to hear from you what it was like to draw upon the real life experiences in a fictional world.
Yeah, totally. I would say that like in costume design, the work is primarily about character.
Hmm.
Um, so it was really, really fun to get to kind of make up my own characters because we were given a script at the very beginning, right? We're given a script, we all read it, we read it 100 times, we break it down a million different ways. We have a lot of meetings where we decide, like, okay, this time, what is the script going to mean? Like, is it about this today? Is it about that? How are we going to show it? What do we want to do? So it was very exciting to get to sort of climb into the driver's seat, I guess, and join that process in the very beginning to originate, to originate stories, characters, and scripts. So I'd say that was really fun for me. And I hope that the fun comes through in the book where I'm like, okay, now I'm driving and I'm going to start crashing into stuff, whatever I want.
No, I think that does come through, like for
Yeah.
sure.
But I also knew that I wanted to kind of capture the texture and the reality of like working life in show business, like the people that I've met and the kind of intense situations I've been in. Like that all seemed like a really like fruitful well to draw from, if that makes sense. Um,
Yeah.
like I don't know, I've worked in show business for I guess more than 10 years now, and I have experienced so much, and it was really fun to get to sort of revisit those things and remix them and take inspiration from them, I suppose.
Yeah, and you were talking about how the costume design is like really deep character work, right? Like
Mhm.
it's really the visual representation of a lot of where characters are at. And
Mhm.
it's one of those things that I feel like a lot of people who watch film and television now kind of take for granted that it's just, like things that are there. Obviously, like people are clothed.
Yeah.
But, I think that there's a certain artistry that, really shines through and made me think about it more whenever I was reading this book about, all these different things. And especially with the character work, also the dynamics of each of these characters kind of ping-ponging off of each other. It's a little bit of a closed set for these characters that you have in the Red Sacrament because there are certain constraints to their lifestyle,
Yeah, they're really stuck
obviously.
there. They're really
Yeah.
stuck with each other.
So it's really interesting to see kind of how I don't want to say it's, I mean, in some ways, I guess at times it feels a little claustrophobic, but those
Mhm.
those parameters allow these characters to interact with one another and how it affects their overall functioning. And I imagine that was probably a pretty hefty like mental exercise for you to have to like run through, because it's a wide cast that you
Yeah.
have with this book. And I'm kind of curious, did writing this book affect how you approach your costuming work at all? Like, has anything changed, you
Um,
think?
okay, I would say that before it even occurred to me to write fiction,
Hmm.
I would definitely be kind of tough on things that I read and on things that I watched. I'd be like, well, this seems like a missed opportunity. What's up with that? And like, I don't know, maybe that was a clue that I wasn't picking up on, that I was curious by or moved by the craft of writing and should try it myself. And now that I have written a book, I am much less tough on books, movies, TV, everything. I'm kind of like, congratulations to anyone who's ever written a book. It is very hard. And I think a lot of my critical impulse was really just like a frustrated creative impulse. So it's changed the way that I receive like scripted work and
Yeah.
books for sure.
That makes sense. I feel like I have gained an appreciation for those things. Like to me, I think the most difficult thing is keeping track of everything.
Hmm.
Like keeping track of what everybody has gone through, especially when you have a multiple character set piece like you do.
Totally. Yeah.
And all of their histories, and then keeping up with the political climate and the social situation, and like the
Yeah.
timepieces and all that stuff, which you do in this book. But one last question before we really get into the plot of the Red Sacrament
Mhm.
is how long did it take you to actually draft this novel? And like what's been the debut experience kind of been like for you thus far? I mean, the book's not out yet, but I want to hear a little bit about writing this book and what it's been like for you to write something like this.
Yeah, totally. So I think the circumstances under which I wrote the initial draft are really not repeatable because
Yeah.
it was COVID lockdown and I had nothing to do. And when you talk about like the scale of the work and all the stuff that's going on and all the research, many characters, like like it was my goal to deliver like a lot of book for the money,
Yeah,
like a
yeah.
really like dense, multi-layered sensory experience with a lot to it. And part of that was also about what I wanted to experience in writing it because I was looking for like a preoccupation. I was looking for a lot of work, like a complicated cast of characters. I was looking for a lot of historical grounding. I was looking for like a lot of both dread and climax, just for my own like creative reasons and because there was nothing going on in the world at the time. Um, so the first draft, like draft zero, I started in January of 2021, like around New Year's.
Okay,
And
yeah.
I was at the end of the story, like with the draft zero by July of that year,
It's
which is
impressive.
just crazy. Like
Yeah, that's impressive.
that's not a replicable situation because I was kind of just writing it and that's it. Like,
Yeah, that makes sense.
and then I went through really significant edits because I had never written anything before and it was a tremendous mess. I say with love, it's my mess. I love my mess, but it was crazy. And then I would say the process of, editing, becoming agented, going on submission, all that stuff took, quite a while because it was, I think, you know, 2021 wasn't over when I had a draft zero and it's now 2026 halfway through and it's
Yes,
coming out. So that was the back end was a longer process, much
that
longer
makes
than the drafting.
yeah, that makes sense. And did you, so I'm always kind of curious about this too, as somebody who's I've now like written one draft of a thing. Did you edit yourself at all, or did you immediately just like send to an editor? Like what does your process look like whenever you
What
finish
I
draft
did
zero?
with that was I tried to leave it alone for a couple months.
Mm-hmm.
I think as soon as I finished, I took one quick pass to just like close some loops in the beginning that I opened at the end, like
Yeah.
just to make sure that it, you know, chronologically made sense. And then I tried to leave it alone for a while and then went through edits. And I think what was most interesting about that was all the different times I thought it was ready. Like it's so cute to think about now. Like I don't know. The reaching perspective after you've been in the draft, I found impossible, basically, particularly since I'd never had contact with the process before. There were a lot of
Yeah.
times when I thought it was ready, and it was like ludicrously unready. Um, so I think part of it was like trying to get it into shape to query with.
Yeah.
And there were a few times I thought that that was ready and it wasn't. Like it was kind of, a lot of different stop and start, I would say, from then on.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think it's the way that you describe that is so funny that it was cute because it's when you're in the thick of it, it's so rough to like kind of see the forest for the trees, I feel like.
Yes, I think it's almost impossible. Like, I think the
Yeah.
mindset that gets you through the draft and that gets the work out of you is like antithetical to the mindset that can edit the work. Like, they are not the same person. You have to become a different person. And I didn't really know how to do that. I think now I have a better idea about how to do that, but the idea that I would ever have it figured out is like also pretty cute. Like, I don't dare.
No, I feel like the writing process is just like ego death after ego death after ego. Like you just start killing off every version of
Yeah.
yourself.
And then
Uh,
when you think it's dead, then you get to try and enter the market, and then you're gonna learn
yep.
all new ways to die. It'll be
Yeah,
amazing.
exactly. And it's funny because I think even whenever you prepare yourself or like you think you know, it's a totally different ball game whenever it's your baby and like it's
Totally.
your thing involved. So I totally get it. But I'm super fascinated by the whole process of how it affects people, which sounds a little
Yeah.
rough, but I think it's a rough thing that like a lot of people, some people talk about it pretty freely.
Hmm.
But I think that we should be talking about it because when you're talking about your creative, like your creation and something that you've sat with as long as you did
Hmm.
with this that you care about and spent so much time with, like it's really fucking important to talk about how that feels through that whole process, you
Yeah,
know?
and it's very solitary work, which is not something that I was used to at all. I'm
Yeah.
used to like in show business, it's intensely collaborative. You're getting noted to death all the time. So I found that once I went into edits, I was like kind of mentally prepared to have my work kind of dissected. Like
Yeah.
that part I didn't find mentally difficult, but definitely in the developmental stage, like my agent made like a big suggestion about the structure of the story. And when
Hmm.
I was experiencing it as a personal attack, that was how I knew that she was right. Like that feeling was a signpost of something actually, where it's like, okay, it wouldn't feel like this if this was not the note, Like
Yeah, yeah,
like this
no.
is actually good. Like you know this because you've, put your heart and soul into a costume and then had it fully cut at dress rehearsal. Like you know that like this is a game you've played before. Like this is the correct note. You got to take it.
Yeah. But it doesn't make it any less painful. Like
No, no, no. It
important to
hurts
note,
every
it
time.
doesn't make it any like no matter how many times it happens, it doesn't make it any less painful.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's so funny how that like how you go through that like so rather quickly, in the creative process, like you were just saying, like something gets pulled at dress rehearsal. That's fast moving. That's
Yeah.
something that's happening like right then and there. So I can definitely appreciate that. It takes a lot of, I think, creative and mental resiliency, emotional resiliency to not
It's
to
wild.
yeah,
Yeah.
not get down and out on your work like that. But I do want to talk a little bit more in specific about the Red Sacrament in particular, and I'm
Yeah.
gonna let you introduce the plot of this book because I'm always terrified of spoiling these things for people. So I'm gonna let you handle that.
Isn't it funny that to write a book is hard and it's a big job, but then to sort of synopsize it for many is like the hardest part, you know?
Well, okay, so this is the thing to me is like you know what it's about to you
Yeah.
and what you want to tell people that it's about, but also it's like I can't give too much away. How much is too much to give away? How
Yeah.
much, you know what I mean? Like
And you
it's
get
very
lost in the weeds because you know everything. You know what I mean? You're
exactly.
like,
You can't
well,
unknow. Yeah.
400 years before the book starts, it's like, no, girl, you better stop. All right, so I'll give it a try, right? The Red Sacrament is my debut novel. It's historical gothic vampire horror. It follows the lives and deaths of a theater troupe of vampires in Paris, 1869, 70, 71. The protagonist, Arnaud, is like not the master of the coven, but let's say he's the managing director of the troupe. So it falls on him to direct the shows and design them, to appear in them sometimes, although he's pretty over this, to manage the theater and its finances, and also to keep its actors kind of happy and on good terms with each other, which is not easy. Um, I'd say the most important part of his job is to make sure that they are safe, that they like kill enough people and in the right ways where they can keep things going, but not, draw too much attention. So it can keep going on as it has for hundreds of years. This status quo is broken by strange visitors. First, a witch from a backward province, and then two kind of forward-looking, enterprising vampires from the New World. And they're going to kind of push the status quo of this troop to the breaking point as the city is like on the brink of revolution and upheaval. And that is the Red Sacrament.
Yes. So there's like that great, first of all, great synopsis because I could never. You gave just enough without giving too much away, I'd say. So fabulous job. Snaps all
Thank you so
around.
much. I'd like to say that it was easy. I was sweating blood and bullets. I'll tell you that right now.
So fair. But the thing about the Red Sacrament that I really appreciate so much is like all of the working pieces that you implemented. In the sense that, like you said, it's a historical gothic vampire novel, and that like those three tenets are the ones I feel like really work in this book, obviously. And the historical side of it, I'm very curious. How much research did you have to do into this book, and or were you ready to roll with this? Or are you like really into French history?
I would say, like a working familiarity with the history. And that is how I became inspired to write the book in the first place, right?
Yeah.
Because it's very much like, um, a response to or like a version of, inspired by the Théâtre des Vampires and Anne Rice's Interview with the Vampire.
Yes.
So really what happened was like I went away for the weekend with a bunch of friends. We got COVID tested for Halloween and we were at a creepy old house watching movies and we watched Interview with the Vampire 1994. And all these friends are like organizers and lefties. And we get to the part where Brad Pitt says Paris 1870. We all get really excited because we're like familiar with the history and we can't wait for all the exciting political upheaval that we're going to see. And then, of course, we don't see it. The movie is about other stuff. The book is completely about other things than that. Like, it's just one little like hiccup almost or reference in a much bigger story. But I was immediately like, okay, that is a story, that
Yeah.
right there is a story. So I knew enough about the history to like get into it in the first place. But as for how much research I had to do, I kind of think of how much research I got to do because it
Yeah.
was really a lot of the fun for me. It was a
Good.
big preoccupation to get me through COVID. So I did a ton. It was actually, I would say, like a lot of the fun. I read, reference books about the era, but I also read a lot of novels of the time. Like I read a lot of Zola, which I think really comes through in the book. Like I do a lot of grave robbing of Zola. The Lady's Paradise with the department store and La Cure and everything. Um, and I also researched because that's the fun part of the vampires. There's kind of no limit to the amount of research you can do because they come from many eras. So I got to go earlier in time. I got to go in different places in the world. I got to research like art and art practice
Yeah.
because I knew I wanted the book to be about like working people and their working lives. So I
Yeah.
wanted to learn a lot about like the lives of ordinary people and what it was like, to be a painter or a vegetable seller or a dancer at these different points in history. So I could really kind of get into the social realism of it. That was really fun.
Yeah, and that was something that, I don't think I had fully considered before reading the book, or I wasn't like fully thinking of sometimes in a lot of vampire stories. And I don't think it's a spoiler to say it, but this actually comes like at the later part of the book, like there's a change in the ordinance, I think during like 71 or 70 to 71,
Hmm.
where, like the bakers are no longer allowed to like bake through the night, like they have to start at 2 a.m. or something like that.
Yeah.
And that
Yes.
changes certain things for this, like, and I had
Yeah.
never like thought of something like that, but that was like that one detail was huge, right?
Yeah.
For these characters. And so it's really fascinating to kind of see like everything that history touches. I mean, obviously history touches everything, but in the way that you write about it, it's very different than, any other vampire novel that I've read. And I want to also preface and say that whenever you were talking about when this kind of came to you, I only read Interview with the Vampire for the first time this like last October, which was like hilarious to me because I picked it up for my honeymoon of all times. And I'm
Yeah,
like, just
sure.
like, I'm sitting on the beach reading about these people just like going through it, existential
Yeah.
crisis, morality. And I'm like, what a read.
Yeah. They're really going through it, you know?
Yeah.
It's like a family, like a family in grief and in crisis. It's a really intense story, like about the family. It's
Yeah.
so I mean, it's been out now. It's like 50 years that it's been out. And it's like it's hard to think of any vampire story or really any kind of evocative gothic story that doesn't have a lot of that in its DNA at this point. Like she fully changed the vampire. Like I think she's as influential as Stoker at this point.
Yeah. Well, the thing that I feel, and look, I am not an expert on vampires. This is me like limited touching, like I was a Twilight girly, okay? Like that was
Yeah.
my
Oh,
first
such a
basis.
rich text. We could talk about that for 4 hours, so let's not. We would
Yeah,
be in so
okay,
much
fair.
trouble.
Fair, fair, fair. But like that was I'm, 27 years old. So like that was my
Totally.
introduction. Then everything else came after, which is a little to me is fucking hilarious, but
Yeah.
whatever. Anyway,
Oh, it's good. It's
um,
good.
but it's funny to see like, and I'm saying this very seriously, and I'm gonna try to say it with a straight face, but like Edward in Twilight is
Mhm.
very much a like suffers with his own like morality and like trying to do the right thing and trying to whatever. But
Yeah.
then you read something like, in my from what I remember of Dracula, which has been a while, not so much the crux of the issue, more of just
Yeah.
like the actual vampire being a terror. And then you move on to like Interview, and then it's nothing but the suffering and the contention of morality. But then with your book, The Red Sacrament, there is that there, but there is so much more. I don't feel like it was, there is one character who is Arnaud's sire, so to speak, who
Yeah.
really kind of contends with this, I feel like, especially towards
Yeah.
the back half of the book. And there's pieces of it that I think that Arnaud goes through as well, but there's much more practicality to the Red Sacrament that I really appreciated for the troop themselves and all of them in their functioning. And so I kind of wanted to give you the space to talk about the the logistics of the theater and their productions and like how you landed on how this would work in this world for them, if that makes
Yeah.
sense. Yeah.
Yeah, I would say this is a lot of like the creative impulse that kind of guided me through the book, which is like, okay, but these are all people with jobs.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
and there's something so tragic to me about a vampire with a job because it's like okay, you have a job and you have to have it forever. Like you don't get to rest by dying. You wake up, at sunset tomorrow again and go to work and go to work and go to work. And that was something that kind of, I don't know, it like captured my imagination. Like, okay, what would it be like? And I know that vampires are often rich in stories for really, really good thematic reasons.
Hmm.
But I've always kind of wondered, like, how though? Like,
Yeah.
I don't know. It's hard to become rich. Like, Count Dracula doesn't live in a castle because he's Dracula or because he's a vampire. Like, he lives in a castle because he's a count. So if you're just some vampire, like, how do you get rich? How do you make it work? It seems like it would be really challenging, actually. And a lot of times there's this answer, which is like, oh, well, they're really old, so they have investments. And it's like, but there are old people everywhere who have nothing to their names.
Yeah.
Like, so I don't know. So I definitely wanted to really kind of get into the nitty gritty of like, what would it take to make this run? Like, how would you have to balance everything you had to balance? Like, to keep everybody happy, to keep them working, to keep butts in seats. Because this is what we
Hmm.
talk about, in showbiz all the time. It's like, you can do your art and that's amazing. But like, if there aren't butts in seats, there's no point. Like, the theater, we're going to have to leave. Like, like it's a business at the end of the day. And because I knew I would be talking about like antagonisms between workers and
Hmm.
management, essentially, both inside the theater, but also outside in terms of the like political situation.
Yeah.
I knew that, those antagonisms definitely exist in theater because I've observed it, like there are workplaces where like the theater, like creative workplaces where it's like, well, we all love doing this. This is our calling. It's what we were made to do. It's so important that we're doing it. This is who we are. It's like, yeah, but at the end of the day, someone's getting paid and you're the reason they're getting paid and you're getting paid, but not as much. Like at the end of the day, this
Yeah.
stage where, your calling and your purpose is taking you is also the site of exploitation of your labor. Like you are also being exploited to get out there. So I knew that that was like a rich thematic ground that I could really draw from, like this exploitation of the vampire, and the exploitation of like the glamour of the stage, the family of the working environment that at the end of the day is still just a job.
Yeah. And I think that you do an excellent job of kind of, I don't want to say romanticizing because that's not it, but like the impact of that dazzlement on stage,
Hmm.
like those key moments. There are multiple references to different plays that they or productions that they put on and things like that. And, there you talk about certain characters having their moment, especially like Alex, like is
Yeah.
certainly dazzling. Like, like I remember certain scenes, and I feel like each character kind of gets their moment in a
Hmm.
different way. Um, some more than others, but it's one of those things that whenever you kind of shine a light upon how glorious it is, and then you cut to the backstage after, of where the real shit kind of, I don't know, like kind of
Yeah,
gets
like where they're working and
going.
they're fighting, and it's like, well,
Yeah,
I need you to stand over there. Like, why are you standing over here? As
exactly.
someone is having the most transcendent, debut of their career on stage, it's like, okay, then you got to get off and you got to bring the basket of bread over to her and hand it to her because then she's got to go out and be the shepherdess. Like, chop
Yeah,
chop.
it's the artistry and the logistics clashing at once, and I thought that was something that was really impactful to think about. And but then you even like so like I don't want to say that's a micro level because that's still a big level, but even on a grander scale, one of the things in this book is about who the audience is. That's a huge like that's kind of how we open up is about how people get to this show,
Yeah.
which is really interesting. There's a system of ticketing
Hmm.
that, nobody can pay to get in. You just have to find yourself a ticket, and everybody who knows what it is knows what it is. And if you don't, you don't.
Yeah.
And that there's a real kind of mysterious, secret, kind of romanticized air to that. But then when we see kind of the political climate crank up and the war kind of takes over,
Yeah.
um, that changes things about
Yeah.
who's in
Things
the
are changing.
audience and
Yeah.
what's acceptable for them to like who's acceptable to be in the audience. And so I wanted to
Yeah.
kind of talk about that part too, because that was not something that I had considered as well, like which butts are in seats,
Yeah. Which butts are in seats? And like when we first, I do kind of, in the prologue, like welcome the reader in, like,
Hmm.
your POV is in the audience and then it moves, pretty abruptly
Yeah.
backstage. Um, and, there's this kind of dark, mysticism and glamour to it. And you get your special ticket that you got passed through some weird person that you know who knows a weirder person, who knows a weirder person. And then you go in and it's all mysterious and dark, and you're like, wow, this is gonna change my life. Like, this is crazy. I might not leave, or I might leave and remember this forever. And then there's all these rules that they have. And then, kind of by the end or by later in the story, the situation in the city has changed such that these rules don't really apply anymore, or there are different rules. And it's like this isn't something that they're choosing and they don't even maybe notice that it is happening, but once it happens, it happens. And they're like, oh, we're in a different city now. Like things are changing. And I think particularly for the vampire who is ageless, when history starts to speed up, when the ground under you starts to change and like something is coming at you and it's like the modern era,
Yeah.
like many vampires in fiction are able to weather this like kind of comfortably, and they can like pick up the iPad and they can like invest in the stock market and they can like buy jeans and they're fine. But I knew that I wanted vampires who would kind of struggle to keep up and to ride the wave as things change. So the audience changing was a way for me to like introduce that change in a really concrete way for them, where it's like, oh, these people are different than they were before. Like, what do we do?
Yeah, and I mean even internally though within when I say these characters, I'm kind of referencing just the vampires at this point.
Hmm.
You have different vampires of like different generations, so to speak. Like you
Hmm.
mentioned, getting to do the research for like different ages of vampires. But I
Yeah.
think that it's such a poignant generational point. Like it's quite like full of humanity, oddly enough, about how certain generations handle what's to come and some like how they just reject. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't think it's a spoiler to say that there's some vampires who won't accept it
Yeah.
and their actions.
They're not gonna be able to weather it, and they're maybe not gonna
Exactly.
make it, because like change is significant, and they are living a longer lifespan than anyone really was supposed to. And it's
Hmm.
like, I don't know, it's like the girls who get it, and the
Yeah.
girls who don't,
No, it's
you
true.
know?
I mean, it's one of those things like, yeah, they don't have the iPad, but I mean, Arnaud spends a good time reflecting on the invention of the modern train, like the iron railway.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
that
yeah.
idea.
He's like, so hold on a second. Wait. He has a tough time also with the camera.
Yeah.
Like as a painter, he's kind of like, so what's that about?
Yeah,
And
his
there's
language around that was super interesting to read.
yeah, like what are they doing? Like how does that picture come out of there like really, And he's sort of watching all of his ability, his many years of being a painter and an artist like made irrelevant, by the push of a button. Not the best feeling in the world, and he's hesitant to get his photo taken. He doesn't want to do it. I think he's a little afraid of like what might happen to him if he gets his photo taken,
Well, I
which
mean,
is
it feels like us with AI right now, right? Like, and
yeah.
like we don't
Like
because
what is that?
exactly.
What is it?
Well, when you don't have rules and regulations around something, much
Hmm.
like there was not rules and regulations around probably cameras and all that back
Yeah.
then, it's fucking scary to just like let this shit run rampant. And you
Yeah.
can feel that fear in the vampires in your book. And I feel like that was super, I like that aspect a lot because I know that vampires are supposed to be this kind of other species, this other population, but it felt very human and integral to the experience of existing in a world, no matter what your classification might be,
Yeah,
mortal
like
or immortal,
I've been alive for a normal amount of years, like a regular
Yeah.
amount, and I live in New York City, and I've grown up there. And now the amount of like that experience where you see a store and you're like, oh, that used to be another store.
Yeah, yeah,
Like I am of a normal age, and I can now remember sometimes 4 or 5 stores deep from one building.
yeah.
So I think that is something that it's fun to make even more extreme with the vampire, who's like, man, I remember when they were when they were like throwing out their pee into the street. I
Yep.
don't know what all this new stuff is. Like,
Yeah, no kidding. I feel that way about like whenever I go back to my hometown and I'm like, that CVS wasn't Eckerd's. That was,
yes,
like
exactly.
bringing it back. So yeah, the way that you write about time and the passage of time was especially something that I was like, okay, I'm emotionally here with this. This feels a little more hell. Like I feel like a lot of people in shorthand when they write a vampire story talk about the passage of time being hell, but like in a way you showed and not told that part of it, through their emotions. But I also kind of want to pivot a little bit to your vampires in specific and the fact like you call this book the Red Sacrament,
Hmm.
and that is how the process or their classification of vampires is titled. Like, they received the sacrament.
Yeah, it's almost
And
like slang that they use.
yeah, exactly. And I kind of wanted to give you the chance to talk about how you kind of came up with that,
Hmm.
the implications of that, because there's a reverence around it too, which I find really interesting. And kind of the rules of your vampires, because
Yeah.
everybody has their own, take on what they can and can't do. And so
That's the
I
fun part. Yeah. The part in
exactly,
every vampire
yeah,
book or movie where they take a little pause and they're like, oh, by the way, this is how we're doing it this time.
yeah,
Every time I love it, and I loved getting to do it. So that was really fun. So yeah, the vampires call like the process of turning the sacrament, like, oh, gave her the sacrament in this
hmm
year. And it's like what I wanted to do to sort of create this social world was give them like slang that they used,
yeah,
like both more elegant terms for things and less elegant. And what I like about the sacrament is that it's a little bit sacrilegious and it's a little bit jokey, but it's a little bit serious also. They are
yeah,
exchanging blood, very literally. Like that is what they're doing. So that, it makes sense that, in this context that that's what they would call it.
absolutely, yeah,
And I also like I knew that I could use the term to flex kind of more serious and less serious because tonally, the way that the vampires behave with each other is both more serious and less serious. Like
Hmm.
they have their squabbles, but then they also, have the weight of eternity at the same time. So my hope was that word would sort of stretch across both, that I could use it for both.
Yeah.
And I thought also about like, where do these vampires come from? Like who was the first vampire? And this is something that I don't like outright tell the reader because I think there is a loss of institutional memory in them. I don't think they exactly know or remember, but as we talk to vampires who are older and they're referencing vampires that they knew who were older, we can kind of like, seed the truth around in these stories. And that was kind of how I wanted to handle like delivering that information was sort of not to say because nobody really knows, but to infer and to make it kind of as clear as I could that it's like there were very early vampires a long time ago, and like who were they?
Yeah.
And this term sacrament, like it's joking, but is it also serious?
Yeah. Well, I mean, me as a former Catholic, I had a field day with it because,
Good.
you
I went
think
to
of,
Catholic school.
yeah,
I
right
wore the
on.
skirt every day, so
Yeah.
that was really happy to hear.
Did you have to kneel down and they measure how far the hem was above your knee, and if it was
No, they
two
would
inches, you
just
got written
it would
up?
have to be at your fingers if you were standing straight. Like
See,
that,
no,
I
we
think
had
they
to kneel
didn't want to do
down.
all that, but they still wanted to make sure that it wasn't too short. You know what I mean?
I mean, we literally, they were standing outside the classroom door sometimes, and you have to kneel down. They had the ruler, they had the
Oh my gosh.
yardstick.
It's
It's
like
so
at that point you're doing
ridiculous.
that because you like the ruler. You know what I mean? Like
Yep.
grow up.
Yeah, but I digress. But no,
Yeah.
anyway, the thing that I, really appreciated about it, like you said, is it has that playful connotation whenever they're speaking in their slang or their
Hmm.
shorthand. But thinking about the actual term of it, the sacrament, like the reverence behind it. And then, like I said, it comes up, but it's not the sole focal point of the book is the quote unquote morality behind it and like
Hmm.
whether giving the sacrament to somebody else is something that's, like whatever, like it comes up again and again here and there, but it's not the
Yeah.
focal point, which I appreciated because there's so much else that's going on as well.
Yeah.
But I also like, I kind of want to talk about, your vampires can't be in the sunlight.
Yeah.
They obviously are immortal. They sleep in coffins.
Hmm.
But there's a real sense of like I kind of want to talk like about their sexuality and their like
Yeah.
attachment style because
Yeah.
I'm like really into psychology. That's what my degree is in.
Yes, we
And
are
I'm like,
getting
they
into
have
the attachment style of the vampires. Thank God. I've been
yeah.
waiting.
No, and I'm like, what kind of like I'm trying to like I'm about to like break out my DSM-5 and be like,
Yeah.
what kind of attachment disorder is
As God intended,
yeah.
we are diagnosing these vampires.
Yes, no. So I wanted to give you the space to talk
Yeah.
about the rules of or I don't want to say rules because I don't think
Yeah.
that there's one size fits all for all of them, but kind of the style of which you
Yeah.
write their relationships.
Yeah. So I knew that like the thing I would be most dramatically interested in was the constraints of the vampire rather than the powers of the vampire. Like what can't they do? And it's like they
Yeah.
can't go outside during the day in a very real way that it will kill them. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And it's like I don't know that they have to sleep in coffins, but it's like their culture and their habit.
Hmm.
Um, and because something to me about sleeping in a bed feels so human, like I
Yeah.
wanted to deny them the ordinary and the domestic. Like they don't eat food. I
Hmm.
think it's maybe impossible for them to do it. Which I always thought is kind of cheating to have vampires eat food. I don't know, just like a personal prejudice.
Hmm.
And I guess cheating is an interesting way to think about it because I really wanted it to be kind of tough for them. Like I wanted it to be a fully different mode of life where it's like maybe they're using like undead or dead as slang because that's not exactly what they are, but it is an accurate way of describing their like separation from ordinary life, where it's like
Yeah.
you aren't having sex or any sexuality at all, or you're having kind of the ghost of referred sexuality, but it's not in the body because you're sort of have left your body behind, or the body's like a beautiful container or an image. They really behave sort of like images. They're really dazzling and beautiful, but they're not embodied in
Yeah.
the way that people are. Like no food, no sex, no bed, no blankets, no pillow. They're literally sleeping in a box. Like they are cold. They're separated from these ordinary human things. And they can't drink animal blood either. Like it doesn't
Hmm.
work. It has to be people.
Yeah, I like that constraint. I feel like that made everything a lot more real in terms of their like need to survive in the city during tough times. Like
Yeah.
especially for the whenever things really get cranked up sociopolitically and
Yeah.
people are like fleeing.
Yeah,
and
the
thinks,
people are leaving. Yeah, like,
yeah.
and this also I think speaks to why my vampires end up in cities because they need like a dense human population to feed off of. They can't live off the land. Like the land doesn't offer anything for them. Like they
Hmm.
need people and they need ideally a lot of people. So they can sort of pass without notice. Um,
Yeah.
yeah.
It makes it very interesting whenever people start leaving. Because
Yeah, it's not
that's
so
their
good.
whole,
Yeah,
yeah.
because there is, spoilers for 19th century history. There is a siege of Paris. Paris is under siege, and it's going to make things pretty difficult for everybody, including the vampires, including the vampires.
Yeah. And the thing that I kind of want to talk a little bit about too is especially Arnaud's attachment to,
Yeah.
there's two different quote unquote intruders or
Yeah.
interlopers that come into the story. The first one is Beatrice, who we find out is a witch. I don't think
Yeah.
that's a spoiler, sorry.
Not at
Um,
all. Not at
and
all.
he forms a rather unique attachment to her.
Yeah.
And then there's also, I don't know if I'm going to pronounce this last name correctly, but Victor and Francois who
Yeah.
come in, and he forms a particular attachment to them in a different way. So I kind
Yeah.
of want to, if we can, without spoiling,
Oh,
want
yeah.
to talk about the two different attachments that we see Arnaud develop to those two sets of characters
Yeah.
and how they, kind of evolve in the story.
Totally. So it's like love interest is really actually not the term.
Yeah.
But it's close.
It's like fascination, I feel like. It's
Something's
like
going on. You know what I
yeah.
mean? Yeah, something's going on. And I think what I wanted to do with these almost like opposite and complementary attachments, right, was my goal was really to put my protagonist, this kind of, you know, midlife crisis middle manager guy, I love him, but that's what he is. Like
Yeah.
he's the one who's like, please eat this pizza, please don't form a union, please don't form a union. Like that's his whole thing. Um, is that I knew I wanted to put him in like a very bad situation, like in a real trap, like a saw trap, essentially. So there's pressure from below with all of these vampiric children slash employees that he has to manage and keep happy. And there's pressure from above because he has this like elderly sire that he has to take care of who's kind of deteriorating. So he's caught in this like, midlife care trap with the kids and the dad.
Mhm.
Who all need a lot of management and caring for. And then he's kind of boxed in also on either side by these two attachments. Like there's almost no escape for him, right? Like and then I can use those things to make things harder, to make them worse, like to put him in a more and more difficult position, um, and kind of see what he does.
Mhm.
But with the witch Beatrice and with, these two shiny new vampires, Victor and Francoise, like I knew that I wanted them to represent like sort of the call and the lure of the future, the
Yeah.
industrial future, the modern era, and also like the kind of equally poisoned lure of the past,
Yeah, yeah,
like
yeah.
of his own past, because the witch Beatrice comes from a place probably a lot like where he grew up in
Hmm.
his human life, and she's very old-fashioned. Um, and these things have a kind of draw, but also like it's almost a shameful draw or attraction. It makes me think of when you're in show business or you're an artist and you move to the city, and then you kind of always have in the back of your mind, like, well, I could just move home and just like marry someone I went to high school with and maybe get a job at an insurance company, and that can be my life and it would be fine. Like I think
Spot on, yeah.
because I needed her essentially to seduce him. And I was
Hmm.
thinking about, okay, how do you seduce a vampire? Like, you could go the Twilight route where it's just like, oh, this woman is the most beautiful and delicious woman that ever existed. She's like the coldest can of Red Bull that you could find in the fridge. And I knew I didn't want to do that. So I thought of what would I miss? Like, what would I want? Like, what would have a hold on me if I was a vampire? And the answer is like, when was the last time you had a hot meal? Like, when was the last time you slept in a bed? Like, it's a domestic lure rather than like a super sexy,
Yeah. There's a
like,
warmth to it, yeah.
yeah, and it's like, don't you miss all that? Like, wouldn't it be easier just to not? And I feel like that there's a shame there, and like also a real kind of there's its own kind of frightening quality. These very like embodied scary witches. There's kind of a mommy thing there, so I knew that I could sort of hit him from one side, and then just when he thinks he's all right, bam, from the other side, I come with these two very enterprising,
Yeah.
capitalistic, elegant. aristocratic vampires who live in a very different way from him in the troupe, and then are going to represent the sort of opposite lure, which is like, what if the modern era was coming and you were going to do an amazing job in it? Like, what if it was good? Like,
Hmm.
what if you can, you know, pick up the iPad and just start typing? Like, what if you were amazing at it? You know, what if you went to every city in the world and stayed in the best hotel in every single city? So it's like the opposite almost.
Yeah, I feel the need to make a chart for Arno. Like on one like at the very top, it's like it's gonna be a graph, and for
Yeah.
each act of the book, he's gonna be at a different point on this graph. It's like the stress from his father figure, from
Yeah.
his children, to his two attachments on either side,
Yeah.
to the past and the future. And poor guy is just getting pulled in every
Yeah,
direction.
it's, you know, we're always making it worse. That's like the one note I found, like, oh, that always came back
Yeah,
in edits. And this is true of friends in their books, which is like, make it worse.
yeah.
Make it worse. You can always make it worse, and it's usually a good idea to make it worse.
Well, I will say, this book really does feel like a character study for him because we're seeing these struggles internally for him. Like it's
Yeah.
it's close third person, so
Yeah.
we're following him specifically. We
Yeah.
do get these like kind of vignettes of outside happenings,
Hmm.
in between the acts and stuff like that. But for the most part, we're following Arnaud and his struggle with this and his perspective from close third person. But
Hmm.
the thing of it is like he we're sitting passenger to all of those things, and I feel like it oddly is very timely and emblematic of where we're at, having just gone through COVID, within the last 10 years. And then, now we're having a technological crisis with AI.
Hmm.
Like this time period that you picked is very reflective of a lot of those things. So it feels oddly timely, even though this is set in 1870, 71, like all that good stuff.
Yeah.
And the thing about it is you do make it worse. It does,
Yeah.
it's a
Things get
pretty,
pretty bad in
yeah.
this book.
It's a pretty big swing at the end of the book, and obviously I don't want to talk about it because that would be a spoiler, but
Hmm.
I guess I wanted to give you the space about the decision
Mm.
in going there and
Yes.
taking things where they go, and the circumstances, both like historically and interpersonally for
Yeah.
everybody, for Arno, and what that felt like to kind of just let it rip and let it go.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
because it's kind of a piece, right? The personal and the historical. And that's, I think, is the fun of writing something historical and also of writing horror. Like,
Yeah.
I think, you know, I have always loved the horror genre and I knew that I would be writing in it. But I'm also like comfortable in like a little bit more of a literary space. And what I think I value most about horror is that it like is the place where we can be truly honest about our predicament,
Yeah.
about the situation that we're in. And maybe not honest like literally factually true, but like it is a space in fiction where we can just really tell it like it feels,
Hmm.
and really say like, okay, but there is a man in a hockey mask and he is stabbing me with a knife over and over. Like it's you can be so real about what we are facing in
Yeah.
horror, and you don't have like it's not necessary for you to find a transformative or peaceful place at the end if you don't want to. You can, but you don't have to. Or you can a little bit and you cannot.
Hmm.
Um, but I knew like I knew I mean I'm writing it during COVID and I'm kind of processing like all of these upheavals that we're experiencing. And it feels like I don't know if you remember that old tweet, which is like it's from maybe 5 years ago or from 2020 actually. And it's like if we keep having major unrest and unemployment hits 30%, we're going to enter something historians call the cool zone. And I was really thinking about the cool zone and like what it feels like to be in the cool zone and making things
Yeah.
worse and worse. So when I'm thinking about the decisions that I'm making, it's like how does it feel to be in a time where all of a sudden the rules don't make sense and are changing, and all of a sudden, like something is coming at you, and everything that you thought was one thing is another, right? And I
Hmm.
think also about the glamour and the mystification of the stage, which
Hmm.
is such a like fun thing to use thematically because it crosses kind of over everywhere. Like France at the time that the book starts is being run by Napoleon III, who's like, we would call him a dictator.
Hmm.
He's the nephew of Napoleon Bonaparte. He after, you know, the revolutions of 1848, he is elected president, and then he decides that he wants to be an emperor instead and does a coup and becomes an emperor, and he's transforming Paris, and it's all of a sudden the Belle Epoque, and everyone's having a great time, and he's almost like a showman himself, like staging the city, and it's like transformation and all of these new exciting buildings, and he's doing this almost like as part of the spectacle of his rule. And then his rule falls apart. So I was interested in this idea of like the glamour of the stage and the mystification of what happens on it, then sort of falling away or the curtain being pulled back. And then we see kind of the exploitation that has been there the whole time.
Yeah. What's
Like,
really going on? Yeah.
and I thought this worked also for like politically what's going on, where it's like we have all these ways that we're supposed to act, and we have, you know, this beautiful vampire, and it's they're kissing you on the neck, and then the teeth come out, like, and then, you know, the glitter is gone and you see what's actually happening, you know. So that
Yeah.
type of reveal, demystification and reveal, is one that I indulge in at several points in the book and in lots of different ways.
Hmm.
And I kind of always knew I would be doing that, and I thought it would be fun, and then when I did it, it was fun. It was as fun as I thought it would be.
Yeah, no, it's so funny. I feel like I say this during every interview, but talking to a horror writer about the horrific, whether it's like the physical horror of something, like with slashers, or the emotional horror of, kind of like what we were talking about, everybody's so gleeful. It's so
It's
fun.
fun to get to do it,
It
you
is. No,
know?
it is. I love how gleeful horror authors are about writing horror. I think that's partially what makes it so fun. But the reason that it is fun is because it's true. And like you said, it's one of the few instances that I feel like we are able to really be honest about like how something feels, even though we're not talking about like a specific instance, that the embodiment of that emotion within a different one, that kind of like placement of the same feelings that we're feeling now in 2026 in this book in 1870 71.
Yeah.
That's a special thing to get to do that. So yeah, I think that readers will be in for quite a ride whenever they hit around that fourth or fifth act, I believe. So that's a really cool thing. I'm glad that you got to do that because I think that that's a real special thing to get to go there. And one last thing I want to talk about before we start wrapping up because we are getting to
Yeah.
the end of the hour. I do want to give you the room, on a little bit more of a positive note, to
Yeah.
talk a little bit about the theater influence of it all. Like you pick specific productions for this group to put on in
Yes.
this book.
Yeah.
And look, I'm gonna be straight up. I am not a theater person. I don't know shit. Oh, like I have no idea.
Yeah.
But I know that thematically what you picked for this book was there for a reason.
Hmm.
And there's one reference to like a guillotine that kind of keeps coming over and over, and that blade that's hanging over somebody's head, which like
Yeah.
artists, like artistically speaking, love that imagery and that thematic, presence.
Yeah.
But I wanted to give you like a little bit more of a practical space to talk about the role of production and what you chose to put in this book, in the end, and why you did.
Yeah, totally. I definitely indulge in like a theatrical structure for the book with like acts and entr'actes, and then there's like your big cast of characters in the beginning, which I find is
Yeah.
helpful when you have a lot of people in the book. I would say like a lot of my work in costume design is making characters legible to
Hmm.
the audience. So I had kind of fun juggling all those people, and I hope I pulled it off. But that was a place where I felt kind of comfortable because I'm like, I can get you to remember these people. I'm pretty sure I can do it. I'm pretty sure I can do it. But as for the plays inside the book, because I knew that they would be putting on shows, and I wanted to sort of trace like one production from its first conception all the way to premiere because they're
Yeah.
performing the old shows, but then they're coming up with new ones. So I knew that like the work arc of like deciding on what the show is, deciding on
Mhm.
who to cast, like starting the process of rehearsal, going through rehearsal, like fine tuning it. Like I knew I wanted to follow that whole process. And I knew also that I wanted to have almost like a variety show structure. Like in French theater of the 1850s and 60s, they had something called a spectacle coupé, which is like three little excerpts put together. And they can be a short play, they can be like a guy with a dog juggling, they can be an excerpt from a larger play that people are familiar with. Like they would do clips, which I think is
Hmm.
interesting. So I knew that that would enable me to do like a couple shows and to keep some variety. And I also knew that practically they would have to do it that way because you can't just have like two stars all
Yeah.
year. You have to spread around the leading role or people aren't going to be happy. You know what I mean? So
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And then when I'm picking my plays, some of them are real, are like historical, and then some of
Hmm.
them are, original, which is to say I made them up
Hmm.
or I adapted them from other pieces. So there's an opera that they do called Le Domino Noir. They do an
Hmm.
abridged version of it. And I chose this because I really like this opera and no opera house has ever put it on anymore. So I decided that while I have the power, I'm going to put it on, right? And I knew also that I needed a starring vehicle for Alex, who's the youngest member of
Yes.
the troupe. She's like the soprano. She's kind of the Christine Daae, I guess, of the troupe. And I knew that early on, like Arno would make maybe the mistake of giving her a starring role very, very, very soon. She's very young and she's really angling for it and she's very ambitious and she's trying to get cast. And that where maybe he should say no and make her wait, he doesn't make her wait and he gives her the starring role and it causes all these cascading problems, of course. So that was how I picked that. Like I needed a starring role for Alex, and then I picked something that I liked. And then they did like a history play, and I picked Marie Stuart because I thought it would be like different enough from all the French drama that they've done 100,000 times before and are totally sick of. And I thought it would also be like close enough, like maybe touching or neighbors to Shakespeare. And I know
Hmm.
my English audience is going to want or to long for Shakespeare, even if they don't know that they are. So I wanted to sort of give it to them without giving it to them. And also, Marie Stuart has two women in starring roles, which I knew I needed. And it's
Yeah.
also like not actually my favorite play. It's like a little boring. It's a lot of these two women having a conversation about power. And I wanted that to be like the problem play that doesn't, that like starts to sort of spiral out of control and it has these two actresses and the play is boring and it's not working and they're miscast and like mistakes were made. So I knew that that would be perfect for that. And then what's the third one? I think the third one we barely even see. It's just like they remount something they did 1,000 times
Yeah.
before.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's like a
Yeah.
classic, like 18th century farce where it's like there's a girl in pants and then there's a guy in a dress and then like someone juggles and someone falls down and someone gets hit with a stick. Like very classic, like old school broad comedy. And I don't think I used any text from that at all. I think they've all done it so many times that Arno isn't thinking about the text, so we don't see the text.
Yeah. Well, I think it's super, even as somebody who is not super familiar with theater and all these plays in the way that, theater folks probably are, I
Mm.
think it was super telling how much was revealed about the conflict and inner turmoil of the group with each play that they were doing. Much like you
Yeah.
said, like your selection of this and that to kind of display, well, this is what's going on internally was
Yeah.
was really, really, I think it helped to move things along and to kind of also pull or no in another direction, like another
Such a shit
conflict
show,
point.
man. This
Yeah.
is really not going well. Yeah, they're all like the plays were definitely just like tools to like
Yeah.
put the characters into conflict with each other in the way that I needed to
Hmm.
maybe thematically touch some things that are going on with him, but mostly just to like create an office predicament essentially. Like because it is kind of a workplace drama or a workplace tragedy. So I knew I needed like the substance of what they were working on to like support that story.
It is, but the cool thing that you get to do with something like theater is like it's also the crux of artistry, right? And
Hmm.
like people feeling like they're getting to perform the art that they want to perform or that they should perform or that they're best suited for and all these
Yeah.
different things and versus, like you said, like the management of it, somebody saying yes when they should have said no, like
Yeah.
all of these different things. Like even though, I mean we're talking about a book here, and we both read and writing and all that kind of stuff. I think that there's a very similar crux for authors in knowing what do I put on the paper, what do I pull back, when do I give, when do I take. And I
Yeah.
think in any creative field you have that. So it was really interesting to kind of think about that in bigger terms, how that was affecting this group of people, their temperament towards one another, and
Yeah.
amid everything else that's going on, sociopolitically, the war, their lifestyle, being where
Yeah,
their
it's
next
all
meal is
kind
going to
of
come
coming to a
from.
head, like, and I knew that very early on, I wanted to have a scene where they would like have their meeting, where it's
Yeah.
like, okay, here's me and like, the top five, and we're all going to decide how things are going to go for the show. And due to circumstances, Arno is really not on the top of his game at this meeting. Like,
Hmm.
he's not doing so good. And because he's like, distracted.
Yeah, he's kind of checked out.
He checked out because he's in a bad mood. 'Cause something actually pretty terrible has happened to him. Like right before this meeting,
Hmm.
he doesn't do what he should do, and he does what he shouldn't do, and the repercussions of the decisions made in this meeting are gonna like play out for literally hundreds of pages, and everyone is coming along on this ride with me as it gets worse and worse and worse.
Yeah, and I think that that's the beautiful thing about the Red Sacrament is that your thoughtfulness and that not one thing is isolated. It's like a set of dominoes falling. It's like everything affects the next, even when it seems like, you read one thing and you're like, oh, so what? But then you find out like, oh, that's so what is actually very important.
Shouldn't have said that to her. That was a
E-
mistake. Like,
Exactly. So it's really interesting to kind of see all of those, the big web of it. Like it seems very granular, but then when you zoom out, it's very much not. Which I have a great appreciation for. And to bring it back to the beginning of the conversation, I know drafting and writing, it's hard to keep track of all of that. So I commend you very much for doing so.
that's my continuity brain, where you have
Yeah.
to remember like how someone's sleeves were rolled up 3 weeks ago.
Yeah, and you got to do it again.
You
No,
got to
so
do it
fair.
again.
Way to go. No, I love that. Well, I think that that does wrap up all of my very specific Red Sacrament questions. But I do want to go ahead and ask, like, what does your 2026 look like? Like, this is coming out on July 7th from Titan. Are you doing any appearances, any events, anything else that you have going on this year that we can promote or plug for you?
Yeah. So I'm going to be at Brookline Booksmith in Brookline, Massachusetts with my friend Gretchen Felker Martin
Oh, hell
on
yeah.
Thursday, July 9th. I'm so excited.
That's awesome.
Um, she's been a dear friend since before I was a writer. So I
That's
think I said
awesome.
to her, "What if I wrote a book as a bit?" Like as a joke, and she was like, "What do you mean? What do
As
you
a
mean by
bit.
that?" And I was like, "I don't know, just like what if I as a bit?" And she's like, "Well, I think it would be funny and you should try it." So now here we are, you know.
Incredible.
And then the New York City launch is going to be at the Strand Friday, July 10th, and I'm in conversation with Nat Cassidy, and I'm so excited to talk to him because he is an actor and a playwright, so he can really hold me accountable for how I treat the actors in this book.
His
I'm
Shakespeare
really
brain.
Yes.
Oof. Every time that he gets started, I'm like, my
Yeah,
my jaw just kind of falls because he is so well versed in Shakespeare. But no, those events are going to be awesome. I'm super pumped for those for
I'm
you.
so excited.
Also, I don't know if you are or but or if you can say, but are you working on anything else right now?
Yeah,
Do you have
I
another
am. I am
project?
working on a little currently secret project.
Okay.
And what I will say about it is that it is historical horror also,
Hmm.
and that it has to do with things that live under the water. It's an aquatic story.
Ooh, I feel
Yes.
like we don't have a whole lot of. Is it if it's hard leaning horror or is it like
I think it'll be like threading a similar needle as the Red
okay,
Sacrament. Like,
right on.
yeah, like,
Yeah, I don't feel like we have like I know Nick Cutter's The Deep, and I know
hmm
that there's like a few others. I'm thinking Laura Hightower, I think, has a book that's
hmm
aquatic, but I'm always all for more aquatic horror. Shit's freaky down
there's
there.
a lot of stuff down there that I don't want to know about, and I'm
Yeah,
creeping myself out in the research, so that's fun.
I don't blame you. Like I think about like submarines can only handle so much pressure, and like
Hmm
there's still shit that exists down there that we don't even know because we just can't get down there. That freaks me
Horrible.
out so
Horrible.
much, so much. So pumped to hear that. But right on. Well, thank you so much, Sarah, for your time and for being such a great conversationalist. I am very thrilled for the world to get the Red Sacrament on their hands. Like I said, I think that it's such a huge book because you capture every facet of what it would be like to exist in this space, which is like to say there were so many things that I hadn't considered before that I'm glad that were brought to my attention in a way
Mm.
because living forever is a hellish experience is what it's feeling
I
like.
would not wish it on my worst enemy. I'll tell you that. There is a character in this book who's a little bit of a self-insert for me, and all I'm going to say is that she does exactly what I would do as a vampire.
Incredible. Well, thank you so much, Sarah. The Red Sacrament is going to be on shelves on July 7th from Titan Books. Everybody should go out and grab a copy. And thank you so much again.
Thank you so much for having me. This was so fun, and I really appreciate the conversation and the space that you make here for so many writers.
Oh, thank you. No, it's literally my pride and joy. I'm like so happy to do it. So, literally, whenever the next thing comes out, we'll do it again. Another very big thank you to Sarah for her time and the extensive deep dive that we do on the Red Sacrament, which is on shelves today from Titan Books. You should definitely go pick up a copy, especially if you're coming off of some Interview with a Vampire withdrawals on TV. I mean, if you need some more of this very angsty, emotional, historical, vampiric lore, then Sarah Hinkley's got it all right here for you with the Red Sacrament. Looking forward to the rest of this week. I believe I should be able to get a bonus episode out to all of you guys for a very cool project I'm doing, in which I'm going to be spotlighting some of my fellow podcasters. So I'm hoping to let this little series run through July and into August. And I got to chat with some really lovely people and catch up with them in the world of podcasting for this series, and I'm very, very thrilled to get to share it with all of you. So stay tuned for that. Uh, yeah, and until then, until Thursday or Friday, I will see you all.